What's up guys, I'm Ryan from LM Tech HD. Hope you guys are doing well and welcome back to another PC build here on the channel. And today we are going to be doing a step-by-step build guide. Now this is not a gaming PC, but you can use this build guide to build yourself any PC. Matter of fact, if you swap out the graphics card we are going to be using in this video with an RTX series card like the 2070, 2070 Super, 2080, 2080 Super, or even the RTX 2080 Ti, then you, my friend, have yourself a gaming PC. So with that out of the way, let's go over the parts we are going to be using in this video. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This video is made possible by Havoc Nation. Havoc Nation is a chain of premium gaming cafes catering all the needs of a casual and a pro gamer. Powered by high-end PCs and latest PS4s, Havoc Nation is not only an experience zone, but also a place to buy cool customized mods, PC parts, and PCs. Click the first link in the description box below to learn more. Alright guys, so here are the parts we are going to be using in this build. Let's start off with the CPU. This is the i9-9900KF from Intel. It is an 8-core 16-thread CPU and it's going to be paired with the ROG Strix Z390E gaming motherboard from Asus. For the memory, we will be using two 16GB sticks of the Corsair Vengeance LPX RAM clocked at 3200 MHz. And for our boot drive, we went with a 512GB NVMe M.2 SSD from Intel. As for the storage, we went with two 4TB hard drives, and these are the WD Black Edition from Western Digital. We also got a few parts from Silverstone. We got the PF360 all-in-one cooler, and we also got a 750W 80+ gold fully modular power supply as well. The graphics card we're going to be using is the Quadro P2200 from Nvidia. Everything will be going inside the Cooler Master Case H500P mesh, and we went with the black colorway. Alright now, so basically this is all we are going to be working with in this video, so let's get started. Put the other boxes aside and remove the motherboard from the box. There are some other things we will need from the motherboard box, but we'll save those for later. Once you take it out of the anti-static bag, I suggest you place it on the motherboard box. And yes, I know we didn't do that, but it's okay. Take out the CPU from the box. Now push down on the lever and pull it out from its sides and lift it up. Locate the tiny triangle which is at the corner of the CPU, because we are going to match that with the triangle on the motherboard socket. Gently lower the CPU down into the socket while grabbing it from both sides, and make sure the two triangles are aligned and gently let it go. Do not apply any force on the CPU, it should fall right in place. Now gently lower the lever down to lock the CPU in place. The black piece usually pops right off if you tighten the lever, but if yours doesn't, make sure to pull it out before you continue. Now it's time for us to install our NVMe M.2 SSD. If you don't have one, then you can skip this step. Alright, now we are going to unscrew the M.2 heatsink screw. Once you remove the NVMe M.2 SSD from the box, align the key with the notch on the motherboard and slide it in. Next, peel off the protective film from the thermal pad and screw the heatsink back on. Now it's time for us to install the memory. This motherboard comes with 4 DDR4 dual inline memory module slots, also known as DIMM slots. As you can see in the diagram, moving from left to right, we have DIMM B1, B2, A1 and A2. If you're going to be installing one RAM stick, then you have to put it in DIMM A2. If you have 2 RAM sticks, then use DIMM B2 and A2. If you have 4, then occupy all the slots. Since we have just 2 RAM sticks, we are going to be installing them on DIMM B2 and A2. Open the tab for both slots by pressing them down and make sure to align the notch on the RAM sticks with the notch on the motherboard. Gently lower the RAM stick evenly and press down with both hands so that the tabs lock in place. And do the same for the other RAM stick. Once that is done, keep the motherboard aside and remove the AIO, thermopaste and screws from the box. Next, you're going to need these 3.5 by 30mm screws, the back plate and plastic spacer. Now slide in the screws through the back plate and use the plastic spacers to hold them in place. Once that is done, flip the motherboard sideways and use these standoffs to secure the back plate to the motherboard. If all is done correctly, you should have something that looks like this. Alright, now it's time for us to plan how we want to install the radiator and also the fan configuration. You can install the fans as intake, exhaust or in push-pull configuration. But in our build, we wanted to use the radiator fans as exhaust, and yes, we thought we were doing that and didn't even realize they were being used as intake until we finished building. What you're watching us do now is installing the fans as intake rather than exhaust. That means the fans will be pulling air into the case, which is not what we want in this build. And also, the way we plan on installing the radiator will not allow us to install the rear fans in the case because the AIO tube will be too close to the fan. But like I said, we realized this way too late in the build. But we are gonna fix that, so if you're using the same case and you're following along, please watch the video till the end before proceeding with your build. Now this is how the build turned out when we installed the radiator that way. And there are a few issues with this configuration, and I thought I should share this with you guys since some of you watching this video might be building a PC for the first time. The first issue is with the way we installed the radiator. Now, if you are installing a 280mm radiator or 240mm radiator, you might have enough space to install the rear fan if you do it this way. But because we are using a 360mm radiator, we didn't have enough space to install the rear fan. The second issue is regarding the radiator fans. Our intention was to use them as exhaust rather than intake. And here is why. The Cooler Master Case H500P mesh we are using comes with two 200mm RGB fans installed as intake. So we wanted to use the 3 120mm radiator fans as exhaust as well as the 140mm rear fan. So basically we should have two 200mm fans pulling air into the case and 3 120mm fans as well as one 140mm fan pushing air out of the case. When everything is done correctly, this is what the build should look like. Now let's continue with the build, and remember guys, we used the old format throughout this process, but now that I have explained how it should be, I hope you can make the adjustment and follow along. Alright, now you're gonna need 12 of these fan screws to secure the fans to the radiator. Now while installing the radiator fans, make sure the cables are facing the same direction. Now it's time for us to install the AIO pump, or before that, make sure to remove the protective film from the base of the water block. After that, apply the thermal paste on the CPU. Next, we will need 4 of these spring screws which you can find in the AIO screw box to secure the AIO pump to the motherboard. So let's go ahead and do that. And make sure guys that you're screwing them in a crisscross pattern. Alright, it's time for us to put the motherboard and AIO in the case. But if you are using a motherboard that doesn't come with the AIO shield built in like the one we are using, now is the time to install it in the case. And once that is done, we will need to install some of the motherboard standoffs, as the case we are going to be using only comes with 2 standoffs pre-installed. So we will need to install 7 more standoffs because we are going to be using an ATX motherboard. Now you can find the standoffs in the screw bag which comes with the case. This is what the standoffs looks like. Once you're done installing the motherboard standoffs, remove the top panel of the case because we're going to be installing the radiator first. You're going to need few of these screws to secure the radiator to the case. Once that is done, go ahead and route the radiator fan cables to the back of the case before installing the motherboard. Now align the motherboard with the standoffs and use these case screws to secure the motherboard to the case. You're gonna need 9 of them if you're gonna be installing an ATX motherboard. Now it's time for us to install our graphics card, and remember guys, this is not a gaming graphics card, so if you're building a PC like this for gaming, I'll suggest you go for either an RTX 2070 Super, a 2080 or a 2080 Super, and if you have the extra cash to spend, get an RTX 2080 Ti and you'll be golden. Alright, now go ahead and remove the graphics card from the box and the anti-static bag. But before we install the graphics card, we need to remove the PCIe bracket. And because our graphics card is so tiny, we only need to remove 1 bracket. If you're using a gaming card, you might need to remove 2 or 3 depending on the size of the graphics card. Now align the notch in the graphics card with the notch on the motherboard, similar to the way we installed our RAM. Once that is done, use the same screw holding the PCIe bracket to secure the graphics card to the case. Alright, few things to note. If you're going to be installing a gaming card, you will need the PCIe power cable to power your graphics card, but our card doesn't need one, so please keep that in mind. Next, we are going to be connecting the fan cables and the RGB cables. In this build, we are going to be using the controller which came with the AIO to control the RGB, and this is what it looks like. It comes with a SATA power cable, the ARGB control box, and a ARGB sync cable. Alright, go ahead and connect the SATA power cable to the control box and the ARGB sync cable to the other end of the control box. Next, connect the male AIO pump ARGB cable to the other end of the ARGB sync cable, and the female AIO pump ARGB cable to the male fan ARGB cable. Repeat the same step for all the other radiator fans. This is the AIO pump cable and it connects to the AIO pump header on the motherboard. Now we've already connected all the radiator fan cables to this splitter, so go ahead and connect this to the CPU fan header on the motherboard. Alright, now that the fans are connected and the ARGB cables have been hooked up to the controller, it's time for us to connect the power supply. Because we are going to be using a fully modular power supply, we have the option to connect only the cables we need, so let's go ahead and do that. Now as you can see, the CPU 8-pin cable has already been connected. Don't worry, I will show you where it is connected later on. Another cable you will need if you're using a gaming card is a PCIe cable which connects to the graphics card. But because our graphics card doesn't require power, we're not going to need that, but I will show you where to connect it on the power supply. We will also need the SATA cable to power our hard drives, SSDs and the ARGB controller as well. Next is a 24-pin cable which powers the motherboard. If you are using any part that requires Molex connection, then you can connect the Molex cable, but we don't need that in this build. Now let's connect them to the power supply. We will start with the 24-pin cable, and these only go in one way guys, so if it doesn't fit, it doesn't belong there. Next is the CPU 8-pin cable. After that is the SATA cable. And finally is the PCIe cable for the graphics card. Again, our card doesn't require power, so we are not going to use it. Next, unscrew the PSU bracket from the case and use these screws to secure it to the power supply. Once that is done, flip the power supply and make sure the fan is facing down before sliding it into the case. Now go ahead and secure the bracket to the case. Alright, it's time for us to install our hard drives, but in order for us to access the drive tray, we need to remove this portion of the PSU shroud. To do that, we need to unscrew the screw at the back of the case and the other one in front. Once that is done, remove the hard drive tray and slide in your hard drive and make sure the connection ports are facing the back of the case. And use the lock on both sides of the hard drive tray to secure the hard drive and slide it back in the case. Repeat the same step for the other drive, and remember guys, if you're going to be installing an SSD, you will need to screw it in. And once you're done, insert the PSU shroud and screw it back on. Now it's time to connect our 24-pin to the motherboard, but before that, make sure the 20 plus 4 pin are hooked up together before connecting it to the motherboard. Alright guys, remember I said I was going to show you where that CPU 8-pin cable was connected. Well, the area labeled A is where it is connected, and the 24-pin cable connects to the area labeled B. And make sure the pins are aligned properly guys. Now it's time for us to supply power to our hard drives. To do that, connect the SATA power cable from the PSU to the SATA port on the hard drives. Alright, since our ARGB controller uses SATA, let's go ahead and hook it up to one of the PSU SATA power cable. Next, we will be hooking up the front panel cables to the motherboard. We will start with the USB 3.1 cable, but before that, these are the ports we will be connecting those cables to, excluding 12. Alright, let's get started. And please be careful with the USB 3.1 cable, guys. Make sure the pins are aligned properly before connecting it to the motherboard. If you do it the wrong way, you can damage the pins. Next is the audio connector, which connects to the port labeled 18 in the diagram. Connect the USB 2.0 to any of the ports labeled 13 in the diagram. And guys, always make sure the pins are aligned properly. Now it's time for us to hook up the system panel connectors. We are going to be connecting them to the port labeled 11. These are very easy to install, but there is a pattern you must follow, so let's go ahead and do that. We will start with the plus LED and minus LED, and these connect to the first two pins at the top, and make sure the text is facing up. Next is the HDD LED plus minus, and this goes right under the first two we just connected, and make sure the text for this is facing down. Beside the HDD LED plus minus, we are going to connect the reset switch and make sure the text for this is facing down. And above the reset switch, we are going to connect the power switch and make sure the text for this is facing up. If done correctly, you should have something that looks like this. Under the plus and minus LED, you have the HDD LED plus minus cable, and under the power switch, you have the reset switch. It's time for us to connect the SATA data cable. Grab these from the motherboard box. If you have 2 drives installed, then you will need 2 of these. Just a side note, guys, if you installed an M.2 SSD, depending on the motherboard, some SATA ports will be disabled. So make sure to check the motherboard manual to know those ports that are disabled before connecting the data cable. Connect one end of the cable to the motherboard SATA port and the other end to your hard drive. Once that is done, then congratulations guys, you've successfully built a gaming PC. Now you can use this time to do the cable management, but I'm just going to skip to the B-roll. Alright guys, if that video was helpful to you, go ahead and toss us a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and remember to share it with your friends as well. Now, question of the day, what is your favorite part of building a PC? Let us know in the comment section below, and if you have any question or suggestion on any kind of video you would like us to make next, be sure to post it in the comment section below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at LMTechHD02. More videos coming your way, but for now, we maxed out. Peace.